Imagine being 16, scared, alone, and pregnant. The people who were supposed to protect you, the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, turn their backs. And just like that, you're erased from their lives forever. It was me. My parents didn't just disown me, they made me invisible. For 20 years, I lived a life built from nothing, struggling, surviving, fighting for my daughter and myself. I never forgot. I never forgave. Then, one November evening, they came back. My parents standing at my door after 2 decades, smiling, pretending, asking for my son. My son, the one they bragged about to all their friends. Here's the thing, my son didn't exist. And what happened next, the secret I revealed, shattered everything they had built for 50 years. Their reputation, their pride, their carefully polished lives crumbled in front of everyone. I'm Grace Myers, and this is the story of how the parents who abandoned me ended up facing the consequences of their lies. Stay with me, because the truth they never expected is about to be revealed. November rain in Portland doesn't fall gently. It presses down, heavy, cold, relentless, like the sky itself is trying to bury something. That night, it felt like it was burying me. I remember the exact sound the front door made when it closed behind me. Not slammed, not gently shut, just firmly sealed, like a decision that had already been made long before I stood there holding that suitcase. The porch light flickered above my head, casting a dull yellow glow over the wet concrete steps. The bulb buzzed faintly, a thin electrical hum that filled the silence where my family used to exist. My name is Grace Myers. I was 16 years old, and at 9:15 p.m., on November 14th, 2004, my parents erased me from their lives. The suitcase was too heavy for what it contained. 3 sweaters, 2 pairs of jeans, my biology textbook, a framed photo of me at age 8, the only one I could find where I wasn't standing behind someone else, and a plastic bag holding prenatal vitamins I had hidden under my mattress. Rain soaked through my hair first, then my shoulders, then my shoes. Cold crept upward from the pavement through the thin soles of my sneakers, climbing slowly, deliberately, until my entire body trembled. But the cold outside wasn't the worst part. It was the silence inside the house behind me. No footsteps rushing after me. No voice calling my name. No door reopening. Nothing. Just the sound of rain hitting the roof and the faint muffled clinking of dishes being cleared from the dinner table. Like I had never been there at all. 7 minutes earlier, we were still a family. At least that's what it looked like. Sunday dinner had always been formal in our house. My mother believed meals reflected discipline, order, respectability, white tablecloth, matching plates, roast beef positioned precisely in the center. My father sat at the head of the table, reading something on his phone between bites. Nathan, my older brother, discussed dental school rotations. Carolyn, my sister, described lesson plans for student teaching. Their voices flowed easily, confident, secure, belonging. I remember staring at my plate, watching the thin line of gravy slowly slide toward the edge. My hands were shaking under the table. I pressed them against my thighs to stop the trembling. I had rehearsed the words all afternoon, simple words, 3 syllables, I'm pregnant. That was all. Just truth. But truth has weight, and in that house, reputation weighed more. I have something to say. My voice sounded smaller than I expected, like it belonged to someone sitting farther away. 4 faces turned toward me. My mother's expression sharpened immediately. She always sensed disruption like a smoke detector senses heat. Yes, Grace. Her voice already carried warning. My throat tightened. The clock on the kitchen wall ticked loudly. Each second felt like stepping toward a cliff. I'm pregnant. The word hung in the air. Heavy. Unnatural. Wrong. My mother's fork slipped from her fingers and struck the plate with a sharp metallic crack. My father didn't move. Not even slightly. He just stared at me. Still, cold. Evaluating. Who is the father? No anger, no shock. Just calculation. Marcus Webb. I whispered. Silence deepened. Nathan stopped chewing. Carolyn's eyes widened not with concern but disbelief. My mother leaned back slowly like she had been physically pushed. That boy from the public school, she said. Yes. He works in an auto shop? Yes. My father stood. The chair legs scraped across hardwood with a long dragging sound. He looked down at me the way people look at structural damage in a house they invested heavily in. You will not keep it. The sentence landed with finality, no discussion. No questions about how I felt. No concern about my fear. Just decision. I swallowed. I am keeping it. That was the moment everything ended. My mother's face changed first. Not grief. Not confusion. Something sharper. Embarrassment. Panic. Social terror. She cannot do this to us, she said quietly. My father's voice followed. If you continue with this pregnancy, you are no longer part of this family. He spoke the words calmly, like reading legal terms from a contract. I looked around the table, waiting, begging silently. Someone say something. Someone defend me. Someone choose me. Nathan stared at his plate. Carolyn looked away. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. And just like that, I understood something terrifying. They weren't choosing between me and reputation. They had already chosen reputation years ago. Tonight was just enforcement. By 9:15 p.m., my suitcase was packed. By 9:17 p.m., I stood on the porch. By 9:18 p.m., my mother pointed toward the driveway. Her finger never tremble, leave. That was the last word she ever spoke to me as her daughter. The door closed, and the lock clicked. One small mechanical sound, ending 16 years of belonging. Rain fell harder. My sweater clung to my skin. My fingers numbed. I knocked once, softly, not demanding. Just hoping, no answer. Through the upstairs window, I saw silhouettes, Nathan, Carolyn, watching. Neither moved. Neither came down. I stood there for 10 minutes. Maybe more. Time dissolves when hope slowly suffocates. Eventually, my legs started shaking uncontrollably. Not from cold. From realization. I wasn't waiting for the door to open anymore. I was waiting to accept that it wouldn't. The walk to the gas station was 3 blocks. My suitcase wheels rattled unevenly across cracked pavement. Cars passed. Headlights swept over me briefly, then disappeared. No one stopped. No one asked. I reached the payphone beside the building. Coins slipped from my numb fingers twice before I could dial. Marcus answered on the second ring. Grace. His voice. Warm. Immediate. Alive. And suddenly I couldn't breathe. They kicked me out. Silence. Then, I'm coming. No hesitation, no questions, just certainty. 20 minutes later, headlights cut through the rain. A rusted pickup truck rolled into the parking lot, brakes squealing. Marcus jumped out before it fully stopped. He ran toward me, his jacket already off his shoulders. When he wrapped it around me, warmth exploded through my chest, so suddenly I gasped. Not physical warmth, something deeper. Safety. I've got you, he whispered. And for the first time that night, I believed I might survive. But survival wasn't what broke me. That came 3 days later. A certified envelope arrived, my father's name printed neatly in the corner. Inside 3 pages. Legal language. Precise. Formal. Cold. Grace Elizabeth Myers hereby forfeits all inheritance rights. The Myers family bears no legal or moral obligation. Any dependence thereof. Dependence thereof. That meant my baby. Erased before breathing. Reduced to legal terminology. I read the document 3 times, then folded it carefully. Not because it deserved respect, but because I needed proof. Proof that love in that house had always been conditional, and I had finally violated the terms. That night, lying awake on a borrowed mattress in a stranger's guest room, I pressed my hand against my stomach. 8 weeks. A life smaller than my palm. You still exist, I whispered. Outside, rain tapped gently against the window. Softer now, almost like breathing. And something shifted inside me. A realization so quiet, yet so powerful, it changed the direction of my entire life. They erased me, but they could not erase what I would become. And one day, they would learn the difference. The first night I slept in Marcus's house, I didn't really sleep. I lay still on the narrow guest bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to sounds I didn't recognize. A refrigerator humming, pipes ticking behind the walls, wind brushing tree branches against the window. Everything felt unfamiliar, temporary, like I had been placed somewhere, not welcomed. Marcus's mother, Diane, had given me a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender detergent. It was warm, softer than anything I'd ever owned, but my body stayed tense beneath it. Because warmth wasn't the same as safety. Not yet. Every time I started drifting off, my mind snapped me awake with the same thought. What if they change their minds tomorrow? What if this is just pity? What if I lose this too? When people remove you once, you start expecting removal everywhere. At 10:13 a.m., I sat up slowly and pressed my palm against my stomach. Still quiet. Still unreal. You and me? I whispered into the darkness. That's all we have now. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. My heart jumped into my throat. Footsteps approached the door, then paused. A gentle knock. Grace. Marcus's voice. Soft. Careful. Like he didn't want to startle something fragile. I opened the door. He stood there holding a glass of water and a small plate with crackers. You didn't eat much, he said. Figured you might be hungry. No lecture. No questions. Just observation and care. That simple act hit harder than anything my parents had done that night, because it wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic. It was normal. And normal suddenly felt like a miracle. The kitchen light glowed warm and yellow. Marcus sat across from me while I ate slowly, each bite heavy in my throat. His mother had gone to bed hours earlier after hugging me, actually hugging me and saying, "You're safe here. We'll figure things out together." Together. I had never heard that word used about my problems before. Marcus rested elbows on the table, watching me carefully. Not staring, just present. After a while, he asked quietly, "Are you scared?" The question broke something open inside me. Because everyone else had been asking, what will you do? How will you manage? Why did this happen? But no one had asked what I felt. My hands started shaking. I don't know what happens next. I whispered. He nodded slowly. Okay, that was it. No solution speech. No forced optimism. Just acceptance that uncertainty existed. Then he said something that would anchor me for years. We don't have to solve everything tonight. We, again, that word. We, Marcus and I, had known each other for 3 years before that night. But love changes shape when survival enters the room. Before, he had been the boy who made me laugh in chemistry class. The one who fixed his own motorcycle engine with oil-stained hands and a permanent smudge on his cheek. The one who listened when I talked, really listened, not waiting for his turn to speak. Now, he was the person standing between me and the world collapsing completely, and he never once acted like that responsibility was heavy. Morning came too quickly. Sunlight pushed through thin curtains, pale and hesitant. I sat at the edge of the bed, holding the legal document my parents had sent. The words blurred every time I read them. Forfeits, no obligation, dependence thereof. It felt less like paperwork, more like a declaration that I had never been loved properly to begin with. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Diane entered with folded laundry. She placed it gently beside me, then sat down, not too close, not distant either, just near enough to show presence. You don't have to tell me everything, she said softly, but I want you to know you're not a burden here. My throat tightened instantly. Not a burden. I had spent my entire life trying not to be one. Perfect grades, perfect posture, perfect silence. And still I had been removed. Diane reached forward and brushed damp hair away from my forehead. You're a child who needed help. That's not something to apologize for. Something inside my chest cracked open fully then. Not loudly. Quietly. like ice melting. That week moved slowly, but everything felt enormous. Doctor appointments, school meetings, figuring out where I would finish the semester. Marcus drove me everywhere in his old pickup, the engine rattling like it was held together by pure stubbornness. Sometimes we didn't talk. We just drove, rain streaking across the windshield, music playing softly, silence that didn't feel empty, just shared. One afternoon, sitting in a clinic waiting room filled with pastel walls and outdated magazines, fear finally overwhelmed me. What if I messed this up? I asked him suddenly. What if I'm a terrible mother? He leaned back in his chair, thinking seriously before answering. Then you'll learn, and keep trying. That's what good parents do. Simple, logical, unshakable. I realized something profound then. Marcus didn't see parenting as perfection. He saw it as persistence. School was harder. Whispers traveled faster than truth. People stared at my stomach, even though there was nothing to see yet. Teachers spoke to me in careful voices, like I was already fragile beyond repair. But every afternoon, Marcus waited outside the building leaning against his truck, sunlight catching in his dark hair. He never missed a day, and that consistency became my new definition of love, not dramatic sacrifice. Steady presence. Winter arrived early that year. Cold air sharpened everything. Breath visible, ground frozen, sky pale and distant. Marcus started working extra shifts at the auto shop, Grace embedded permanently into the lines of his hands, exhaustion under his eyes. But he never complained. One night I found him asleep at the kitchen table, bills spread around him like fallen leaves. I touched his shoulder gently. You don't have to do this alone, I said. He smiled sleepily. I'm not alone. Again, At 12 weeks, we heard the heartbeat. Fast. Strong, alive, the sound filled the small examination room like a drum echoing through water. I gripped Marcus's hand so tightly my fingers went numb. Tears rolled down my temples into my hair. That sound, that tiny racing rhythm, was proof that something beautiful could grow in the middle of abandonment. Marcus whispered against my forehead. That's our future. But fear never fully disappeared. Late at night, lying awake beside the window, I would imagine worst-case scenarios. Money running out, medical emergencies, Marcus leaving, history repeating itself. Because when you've been discarded once, your brain prepares you for the next time constantly. One evening, I finally told him this. I keep waiting for the moment everything falls apart again. He didn't rush to deny it. Instead, he said, life does fall apart sometimes. My chest tightened. Then he added, but we rebuild faster when we build together. That sentence stayed with me longer than any promise of forever. Spring arrived quietly. Snow melted. Air softened. My body began changing in visible ways now. Roundness forming. Movement fluttering inside me like tiny wings. For the first time, I began to feel something unfamiliar. Not fear, not survival, anticipation. Life was no longer just something I endured. It was something approaching. One evening, Marcus took me to the small hill behind his house where the city lights stretched out like scattered stars. He placed his hand gently on my stomach. You're going to be stronger than both of us, he murmured. I laughed softly. How do you know? Because you're starting life, already loved. And in that moment I realized something profound. My child would never know what conditional love felt like. Never know doors closing without explanation. Never learn silence as punishment. That cycle ended with me. But destiny rarely allows peace to settle fully. Because the moment life finally feels stable, something unexpected shifts, and ours came suddenly, violently, without warning. 3 months later, Marcus's motorcycle would meet a red light that never turned green. And everything we built together would be tested in ways I could not yet imagine. Grief doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a whisper, like a shadow that slowly spreads until it swallows everything. Grace didn't know that yet. She still believed life was finally turning in her favor. Marcus had been gone for only 3 hours. But something felt wrong. Grace stood near the small apartment window, her fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped mug of tea that had long gone cold. Outside, rain slid down the glass in slow, uneven streaks, like the sky itself was crying, but didn't want anyone to notice. Marcus should have been back by now. He said he'd only go for a short ride, just to clear his head, just to bring groceries. He always came back fast, especially now, especially since Lily. Grace gently placed her hand over her belly. 7 months pregnant, the baby moved softly inside her, small kicks, like tiny reminders that life was still growing, still hoping, still trusting. Marcus had been talking to Lily every night. He would kneel beside Grace, place his ear on her stomach, and whisper stories about the future. Hey, little star, I'm your dad. I'm still learning, but I promise I'll protect you. Always. Grace smiled at the memory. Then she looked at the clock again. 3 hours had become 4. Her chest tightened. She tried calling his phone. No answer again. Nothing. A third time. Voicemail. Her heartbeat started pounding louder than the rain outside. Maybe traffic. She whispered to herself. Maybe his phone died. Maybe a loud knock slammed against the apartment door. Grace froze. Her heart dropped so suddenly, felt dizzy. Slowly, carefully, she walked toward the door. Another knock, harder this time. Her hand trembled as she opened it. 2 police officers stood outside. And in that moment, before they spoke, before they explained, before a single word left their mouths, Grace already knew. Her world ended in silence. She didn't remember falling. She didn't remember screaming. She didn't remember the neighbors gathering or the officers helping her sit down. All she remembered was one sentence repeating again and again inside her head like a broken echo. Motorcycle accident. Instant impact. He didn't survive. Didn't survive. Grace sat on the floor for hours after they left. The apartment felt bigger now, empty in a way that walls cannot describe. Marcus's jacket still hung on the chair. His shoes were by the door. His coffee mug sat in the sink half-washed. Every object screamed his presence. Every object reminded her he would never touch them again. She pressed her face into his jacket and inhaled deeply. His scent was still there, warm, familiar, safe. She broke. A sound came out of her that didn't feel human, raw, shattered, endless. Her hands clutched her stomach as tears soaked through the fabric. Marcus, she whispered. He didn't even meet her? You promised. You promised you'd stay. The days that followed blurred into one long nightmare. Funeral arrangements, paperwork, questions. Voices speaking around her but never reaching her. People said things like, he's in a better place. You must stay strong. Everything happens for a reason. Grace wanted to scream. What reason? What possible reason takes a man who was finally building a family? What reason leaves a pregnant woman alone in the world again? At the funeral, she stood beside the coffin like a ghost watching someone else's life. Marcus looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Like he was just sleeping and might wake up if she called his name loud enough. She placed her hand on the wood. Final. Real. I don't know how to do this without you, she whispered. And I'm so scared, Marcus. I'm so scared. That night, the apartment felt unbearable. Silence pressed against her ears until it hurt. She couldn't sleep in the bed they shared. She couldn't sit on the couch where they planned Lily's future. She couldn't breathe in a space filled with memories that had nowhere left to go. Rocky, Marcus's dog, lay beside her. He hadn't barked once since the accident. He just watched the door, waiting. Still believing Marcus would walk in. Grace hugged him tightly and cried into his fur. We're both waiting for someone who isn't coming back, aren't we? Rocky whimpered softly. Grief is strange. It doesn't just hurt emotionally. It invades the body. Grace stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring about time. Days passed, but she couldn't tell which ones. Her world had shrunk to survival. But then something unexpected happened. Lily kicked harder than ever before, strong, sudden, demanding. Grace gasped. Her hands flew to her stomach. Another kick, then another. It was as if the baby was saying, I'm still here, you're not allowed to disappear. Tears flooded Grace's eyes. I know, she whispered. I know, I still have you. But strength doesn't return overnight. Pain doesn't fade just because responsibility exists. Some nights Grace sat on the kitchen floor, unable to move, unable to breathe, drowning in memories, the laughter, the promises, the future that died with Marcus. And yet, every morning, Lily moved. Every morning, life demanded attention. Every morning, Grace faced a choice, break or continue. Money became a problem fast. Marcus had been working extra shifts. Now his income was gone, bills piled up. Rent notice arrived. Grace searched desperately for work, but employers hesitated. 7 months pregnant, emotionally unstable, no references. No guarantee she could stay long. Doors closed again and again. Rejection felt familiar, painfully familiar. Just like when her parents threw her out. Just like when the world decided she was disposable. One evening, after another failed job search, Grace sat on a park bench, exhausted beyond words. The sky glowed orange with sunset. Children played nearby. Families laughed together. Normal life continued around her, completely unaware that her entire universe had collapsed. She stared at the horizon. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm so tired. Wind moved gently through the trees. Rocky rested his head on her knee. Then Lily kicked again, harder than before. Grace laughed weakly through tears. Okay, I hear you. She wiped her face, slowly stood, and made a decision. If the world wouldn't support her, she would build her own support, piece by piece, breath by breath. Weeks passed. Grace took small cleaning jobs, delivered food, did laundry for neighbors. Anything that kept money coming. Her body hurt constantly. Her heart still felt shattered. But something new was forming inside her. Not happiness, not peace. Something quieter. Something stronger. Determination. The night Lily was born, a storm raged outside. Thunder shook the hospital windows. Grace screamed through pain that felt endless, unbearable, consuming. But when Lily finally cried, everything changed. The sound filled the room like light breaking through darkness. The nurse placed the tiny baby in Grace's arms. Small. Warm, alive. Grace stared at her daughter, tears falling silently. She has your eyes, she whispered to Marcus, though he wasn't there. She has your strength. Lily gripped Grace's finger tightly. And in that moment, Grace understood something powerful. She had lost everything once. Then she built a new life. Then she lost everything again. But this time, she still had one miracle left. And that was enough. That night, holding her newborn daughter, Grace made a promise. Not whispered. Not weak. Not uncertain. A promise carved deep into her soul. I will never let you feel abandoned. I will never let you believe you are unwanted. I will become strong enough for both of us. Outside, the storm slowly faded. Inside, a new life had begun. But Grace didn't know yet. The hardest battles were still ahead. Because somewhere far away, her parents were watching. And for the first time in years, they were starting to pay attention again. Pain changes shape over time. At first, it crushes you. Then it settles quietly inside your bones. And eventually, you learn how to carry it without collapsing. Grace didn't realize when that change happened. She only knew one thing: Lily needed her. And that meant she had no choice but to keep moving. The hospital discharged them 2 days later. No grand welcome. No family waiting outside. No warm home filled with celebration. Just Grace, a newborn baby, and a small bag of belongings. When she stepped outside, cold air brushed against Lily's tiny face. The baby stirred softly in her blanket. Grace pulled her closer. "Don't worry," she whispered gently, kissing her forehead. "I'm here. I'm always here." But inside, she wasn't sure how long always would last. The apartment felt smaller than ever. Cramped. Quiet. Heavy. Marcus's absence had become a permanent presence. His jacket still hung where he left it. His books still stacked beside the bed. His favorite mug still chipped along the rim. Grace had tried to move things once. She couldn't. It felt like erasing proof that love had existed. So she left everything untouched like a museum of memories. The first night alone with Lily was terrifying. Babies don't come with instructions. They cry suddenly, loudly, endless. Grace panicked at every sound. Was Lily hungry? Cold, sick, in pain? She checked her breathing again and again. Sometimes she woke up in the middle of the night just to make sure Lily's chest was still rising. Fear became her shadow, constant, unrelenting. Sleep disappeared from Grace's life. Day blended into night. Night blended into morning, feeding, burping, changing, rocking, repeating. Her body ached from exhaustion. Her eyes burned constantly. Her hair remained tied in the same messy knot for days. But every time Lily wrapped her tiny fingers around Grace's thumb, something inside her softened. Something reminded her why she kept going. Money was running out fast. Diaper was expensive. Formula was expensive. Rent was expensive. Life was expensive. Grace returned to work only 3 weeks after childbirth. Her body hadn't healed fully. Her emotions hadn't settled. But survival didn't wait for recovery. She cleaned houses during the day, while Lily slept in a small carrier strapped to her chest. At night, she stitched clothes for neighbors. Sometimes she skipped meals to save money. Sometimes she pretended she wasn't hungry. Sometimes she drank water just to silence her stomach. People judged her constantly. Single mother, no husband, no family support. Some neighbors whispered. Some stared. Some offered pity that felt more like insult than kindness. Grace stopped caring. Pain had already taken everything that mattered. Strangers' opinions meant nothing. But loneliness was different. It crept in quietly during silent evenings. When Lily finally slept. When the apartment was dark. When memories replayed without permission. Grace would sit near the window, holding Marcus's photograph. "I did it today," she would whisper softly. She smiled for the first time. She held my finger longer. "She looks like you when she sleeps." Sometimes she smiled while speaking. Sometimes tears fell silently. Sometimes she just stared, saying nothing, listening to the silence that never answered back. Months passed. Lily grew stronger, her eyes brighter. Her tiny laughter filled spaces that grief once occupied. For the first time since Marcus died, Grace heard joy inside her own home. Small, fragile, but real. Then winter arrived. And with it a new challenge. Lily got sick. It started with a small cough, then fever, then restless crying that wouldn't stop. Grace panicked. Hospitals meant bills she couldn't afford. But Lily's breathing grew heavier faster. Fear crushed logic. Grace wrapped her tightly and rushed to the emergency clinic in the middle of the night. Her hands trembled the entire way. What if I lose her too? What if life takes everything again? Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. The doctor said it was an infection, treatable, not life-threatening. Grace nearly collapsed from relief, but when she saw the bill, her knees actually weakened. She didn't have enough money, not even close. Her chest tightened with shame as she explained her situation quietly. The receptionist looked tired, impatient, then sighed. "You can pay in installments." Grace nodded quickly, tears filling her eyes. Relief mixed with humiliation. But Lily was safe. That was enough. That night, something changed inside Grace. Fear no longer controlled her. Responsibility did. She realized something important. Love wasn't just emotion. Love was sacrifice, endurance, strength when strength feels impossible. Grace started planning seriously for the future, not just surviving day to day, but building something stable, something permanent. She enrolled in online classes during Lily's naps, business basics, accounting, management. She studied late at night while exhaustion blurred her vision. Sometimes she fell asleep with books still open. Sometimes she forgot what she read 5 minutes earlier, but she kept going because she understood something powerful. No one was coming to rescue her. She had to become her own rescue. Years passed slowly, but meaningfully. Lily learned to crawl, then walk, then talk. Her first word wasn't "Mama." It was, because she loved staring at sunlight through the window. Grace laughed and cried at the same time. "My little light," she whispered, hugging her tightly. Financial struggles continued, but slowly improved. Grace got promoted to supervisor in one of the cleaning companies. Her discipline impressed people. Her reliability became known. Her quiet strength undeniable. She saved every extra rupee. Every coin mattered. Every sacrifice had purpose. But healing was slower than progress. Some nights grief returned unexpectedly, triggered by a song, a memory, a random scent that reminded her of Marcus. Pain never fully left. It simply became quieter, less sharp, more distant, like thunder far away. On Lily's 5th birthday, Grace baked a small cake. Nothing fancy, just simple chocolate frosting. They celebrated alone, candles glowing softly. Lily clapped happily. "Make wish," she said excitedly. Grace closed her eyes. Her wish wasn't complicated. Let her always feel loved. Let her never feel abandoned. Let me never fail her. When she opened her eyes, Lily was smiling brightly. And for the first time in years, Grace felt something she thought she lost forever: peace. But life rarely stays calm for long. One evening after returning from work, Grace found a letter slipped under her door. No name on the outside, no return address. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside only a few words were written. We want to meet you. It's time to come home. Her breath stopped. She recognized the handwriting instantly. Her parents. After all these years, after abandoning her, after never asking if she survived, they suddenly wanted to meet. Why now? Why after so long? Why when she had finally built something without them? Grace's heart pounded violently. Confusion, anger, fear. Memories crashed into her mind all at once. Cold voices, closed doors, lonely nights. She looked at Lily playing peacefully on the floor. Her entire world, her entire purpose, her entire strength. Grace folded the letter slowly. Her voice barely a whisper. They don't get to walk back into our lives just because they decided to remember me. But deep inside, questions had already begun growing. Why now? What did they want? And most importantly, would meeting them reopen wounds she fought so hard to heal? That night, Grace couldn't sleep. The past was knocking again. And this time, it wasn't asking politely. Some doors should never be reopened, not because what's behind them is unknown, but because you already know exactly how much it hurts. Grace stood in the middle of her small apartment, the letter still clutched tightly in her hand. The paper had softened from how many times she had unfolded, read, and folded it again. We want to meet you. It's time to come home. Home, the word felt foreign, heavy, almost insulting. That house had never been home after the day they pushed her out, after the day they decided her existence was shameful, after the day they chose pride over their own daughter. So why now? Why after years of silence? Why after she survived everything alone? Why after she buried the man who loved her when they didn't? Grace sat down slowly, her mind spinning in circles. Across the room, Lily was coloring happily, humming to herself, completely unaware that the past had just knocked on their door. Grace watched her daughter carefully, her laughter, her innocence, her warmth, everything Grace had fought to protect. Everything she built from nothing, and suddenly fear replaced anger. Not fear of her parents, fear of what their return might take away. That night, Grace didn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, memories replaying like an old film she couldn't pause. Her father's cold voice, her mother's silent disappointment, the door closing behind her. The feeling of standing outside alone, unwanted, erased. She had rebuilt herself from that moment, brick by brick, tear by tear. And now they wanted to return. Just like that? No explanation, no apology. No acknowledgement of what they had done. Dressed to turn home, Grace turned her head and looked at Lily sleeping peacefully beside her, her tiny chest rising and falling slowly. Soft breathing, warm presence. Grace whispered into the darkness, I won't let anyone hurt us again. But deep down, she knew she had to face them, not for reconciliation, not for forgiveness, for closure, for answers. For the girl she once was who never got to speak. 3 days later, Grace stood outside the house she once called home. Nothing had changed. The same gate, the same painted walls, the same garden her mother used to care for obsessively. Time had moved forward everywhere else, but this place looked frozen, like it had been waiting, or pretending nothing had ever happened. Her chest tightened. Memories weren't just emotional, they were physical. Her body remembered fear. Her hands trembled slightly as she rang the bell. Footsteps approached from inside, slow, careful. The door opened. Her mother stood there, older, thinner, hair more gray than black now, but the eyes were the same, sharp, observing, calculating. For a moment neither spoke, just stared. Years of silence hanging between them like thick fog. Then her mother whispered softly, Grace. Grace didn't respond. She simply waited. Her mother stepped aside. Come in. Not I'm sorry, not I missed you. Just come in. Grace walked inside slowly. The house smelled the same. Furniture unchanged. Family photos still hanging, but none included her after she left. That small detail cut deeper than expected. She had been erased completely. Her father sat in the living room, still straight-backed, still composed, still emotionally distant. He looked up as she entered. Their eyes met, for the first time in years. Silence stretched long, uncomfortable, suffocating. Finally, he spoke. You look well. Grace almost laughed. That was it? After everything? That's what you say after 10 years? She replied calmly. No anger in her voice, just emptiness. Her father cleared his throat slightly. We thought it was time to talk. Grace folded her arms. About what? Another pause. Her parents exchanged a glance. Something unspoken passed between them, and Grace noticed immediately. They were nervous, but not guilty, not emotional. Nervous, like people preparing for negotiation. Her stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. Her mother brought tea, hands shaking slightly, but still avoiding eye contact. Grace didn't touch the cup. I didn't come here to drink tea, she said quietly. I came to understand why you suddenly remembered I exist. Her father leaned forward slightly, his voice measured, controlled. We never forgot you. Grace's eyes hardened. You disowned me. Silence. Heavy, unavoidable. Her father didn't deny it, didn't explain it, just continued speaking. You made choices that embarrassed the family. Grace felt something cold settle inside her chest. Not pain, not anger, clarity. They still didn't understand. They still didn't care. They still believed they were justified. Her mother finally spoke softly. Me heard you have a child? Grace froze. There it was. The real reason, not love, not regret. Information, interest, curiosity. Her voice dropped slightly. How old? Her mother asked quickly. 10? Her father leaned forward more now, eyes sharper. Boy or girl? Grace didn't answer immediately. Something instinctive told her to be careful. Very careful. Why does that matter? She asked slowly. Her parents hesitated, then her father said calmly, because of family legacy matters. The room went silent. Grace's heartbeat slowed. Everything suddenly became clear, painfully clear. They weren't here for her. They never were. They wanted an heir, a continuation of their name, a replacement for the daughter they discarded, a connection to something they could control. Her stomach twisted with disgust. Her mother spoke again, voice softer now, almost gentle. You struggled all these years alone. It must have been hard. Grace stared at her. 10 years of silence, and now sympathy. It was, Grace replied flatly. Her mother nodded slowly. We can help you now. There it was again. Offer disguised as care, but underneath expectation, transaction, condition. Grace leaned back slowly. What do you want? Her father answered immediately. Bring the child here? No hesitation, no emotion, just instruction. Grace felt heat rise behind her eyes. Why? Her father's expression hardened slightly. Because that child belongs to this family. The words hit like a slap. Grace stood up slowly. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. No. Her voice was calm, but final. Her mother stood quickly. Grace, listen. We only want what's best. What's best? Grace interrupted sharply. Her voice trembled now, but not with weakness. With years of buried pain finally rising. What was best when you threw me out? What was best when I slept hungry? What was best when I buried the man who loved me while you didn't even ask if I was alive? Her breathing became heavier, her chest rising and falling rapidly. You don't get to decide what's best now. Silence filled the room again. But this time it was different. This time Grace was not the powerless girl they abandoned. She was a mother, and mothers don't negotiate when it comes to their children. Her father's voice grew colder. You are being emotional. Grace laughed softly. Yaz. I am. Because I'm human. Something shifted in his expression, annoyance, lost control. He wasn't used to resistance. Not from her, not from anyone. Then he said something that changed everything. If the child is a boy, he must carry our name. The room froze. Grace stared at him slowly, each word heavy, precise, dangerous. She repeated quietly. Her mother spoke quickly now. Yes, we need to know, is it a boy? Silence stretched long. Grace felt something powerful rise inside her. Protection, strategy, instinct. She looked directly at them. Her face calm, her voice steady. No. They leaned forward, confused. What do you mean no? Her father demanded. Grace spoke slowly, carefully. There is no son. Silence exploded across the room. Shock, confusion, disappointment. Her mother whispered. Then a daughter? Grace nodded once. Their faces changed instantly. Interest faded. Energy dropped. The tension dissolved, but not in relief, in indifference. And in that moment, Grace saw the truth clearer than ever. They never wanted her. They didn't want Lily. They wanted ownership, continuation, control, a male heir, nothing more. Grace turned toward the door. Conversation over. Illusion destroyed. But behind her, her father spoke one last time. Cold, measured. You are making a mistake. Grace stopped but didn't turn. No, she said softly. You made yours 10 years ago. And she walked out. Outside, the air felt lighter, keener, freer. Grace inhaled deeply. Her hands shook slightly, but her heart felt steady. For the first time, she had faced them without fear, without needing their approval, without needing their love, because she already had everything they never gave her: purpose, strength, and a daughter who was worth more than their entire legacy. That night, Lily hugged her tightly. Where did you go, Mama? Grace smiled softly, kissing her forehead. To close an old door. Lily tilted her head. As it closed now, Grace held her closer. Yes, but deep inside, she knew something else. Doors closed quietly. But pride, greed, and control, they don't give up easily. And this was only the beginning. Some people don't accept no, not because they didn't hear it, but because they believe your no is temporary. Grace thought leaving that house meant ending something. She was wrong, because control doesn't end when a door closes. It simply finds another way in. For 3 days after the visit, nothing happened. No calls, no messages, no letters, just silence. But this silence felt different, heavy, watching, waiting. Grace tried to return to normal life, work, home, Lily's school routine, grocery runs, bedtime stories, but something inside her wouldn't relax. Instinct. The same instinct that had kept her alive when she was 16, alone and unwanted. Something was coming. She just didn't know what. It started small, almost harmless. A phone call from an unknown number. Grace ignored it. Then another call, and another. By the 6th call that day, irritation replaced caution. She answered. Silence, no voice, just faint breathing. Then the line disconnected. Her skin prickled. Wrong number? Maybe. But her body didn't believe that. The next day, flowers arrived, white lilies, expensive arrangement, no note. Grace stared at them for a long time. She hadn't told her parents where she lived. At least she didn't think she had. Her stomach tightened slowly. People with money don't search, they find. That night, Lily asked an innocent question. Mama, who is the man watching our building? Grace froze. Her heart stopped mid-beat. What man? Lily pointed from the window. The one in the car, he's been there every day after school. Grace walked slowly to the curtain. Carefully moved it aside. A black sedan sat across the street, engine off. Driver inside, not moving. Watching her pulse began to hammer. Not coincidence. Not mistake. Surveillance. Grace closed the curtain slowly. Her voice calm when she turned to Lily. Probably someone visiting a neighbor, but children notice things adults dismiss. Lily shook her head. No, he watches our door. Grace forced a smile. Come help me set the table. But her hands trembled as she picked up the plates. They didn't let go. They were never going to. That night, Grace didn't sleep again. She sat near the window, lights off, watching the street. The car stayed hours past. At 20:17 a.m., the engine started. The car drove away like a shift had ended, like someone had been assigned a job and completed it. Grace leaned back slowly. Fear wasn't loud. It was quiet, cold, precise. Her parents weren't asking anymore. They were observing, planning, waiting for weakness. The letter arrived the next morning. Formal envelope, heavy paper. Her name written in her father's exact handwriting, sharp, controlled, disciplined. Inside, only one sentence. You misunderstand our intentions. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no emotion, just correction. Grace crushed the letter slowly in her fist. No, she whispered. I understand perfectly. Days passed. The pressure increased, but never directly. Her workplace received a donation from an anonymous sponsor, large enough to fund an entire year of operations. Her manager celebrated. Everyone was grateful, but Grace knew influence. Positioning, making themselves useful, making refusal harder. Then Lily's school called. A generous educational grant had been offered for Lily's future. Private tutoring, advanced programs, elite opportunities, all paid. Anonymous donor. Grace declined immediately. The principal sounded confused. This could change her entire future? Grace's voice remained steady. Her future is not for sale. But when she hung up, her hands shook. They were expanding their reach. Work, school, community. Everywhere Grace existed, they were inserting themselves. Slowly. Strategically, like vines wrapping around a house, not breaking it, just tightening until movement becomes impossible. Then came the invitation, this time official, embossed card, her parents' 40th anniversary celebration, large venue, elite guest list, city's most powerful people attending, one line under her name. Your presence and your child's would complete our family. Grace stared at the words for a long time. Not request, expectation, public stage, public image, public narrative. They weren't asking to meet Lily anymore. They were planning to present her, display her, claim her. Grace sat at the kitchen table long after Lily slept. Invitation lying in front of her. Her mind replayed everything. The car watching the building, the anonymous donations, the school funding, the letter, the pressure. They weren't emotional people. They were strategic people. And strategic people never move without a plan, which meant this anniversary party was not a celebration, it was an operation. She walked into Lily's room quietly, sat beside her bed, watched her sleep, soft breathing, relaxed face, complete trust. Grace brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. They think you're something they can claim, she whispered softly. They think blood means ownership. Her chest tightened. But you are not their legacy. You are my survival. 2 days later, Grace noticed something new. People at work treating her differently, whispering, glancing, smiling in a way that felt knowing. Finally, one coworker approached carefully. Your parents are very respected people. Grace's stomach dropped. What do you mean? They've been speaking about you, how proud they are, how they're reuniting the family soon. Her pulse roared in her ears. Reuniting. She never agreed to anything. They were creating a narrative. Publicly. Before she could refuse. Before she could contradict them. Before truth could interfere. Grace left work early that day, her mind racing faster than she could organize thoughts. This was escalation. They weren't just pressuring her. They were rewriting reality, making her refusal look unreasonable, making themselves look forgiving, generous, loving. The world would see parents welcoming back a lost daughter, not parents reclaiming property. That evening the black sedan returned, closer this time, parked directly across her building entrance. Driver watching openly now, not hiding, not pretending, a message without words. We are still here. We will remain here until you cooperate. Grace's fear finally transformed into something stronger. Anger. Cold, controlled, intelligent anger. She wasn't 16 anymore. She wasn't powerless. She wasn't desperate. She had survived worse than intimidation, much worse. And survival teaches something important. When someone tries to control the story, you take control of the truth. She opened the anniversary invitation again. Read it slowly, every word, every hidden meaning. Then she smiled slightly. Not warm, not happy. Strategic. If they want a public family moment, she whispered, they'll get one. But not the one they expect. The next morning, she called the number printed on the invitation. Her mother answered immediately, voice eager, relieved. We knew you would come to your senses. Grace's voice calm, even gentle. Yes, she said. I'll attend. Silence on the other end, then visible excitement in her mother's voice. And Lily? Grace paused. Yes, she said softly. I'll bring my child. Her mother exhaled deeply, satisfied, victory assumed, control restored. But Grace's eyes were already distant, focused somewhere far beyond the conversation. After the call, she opened a locked drawer. Inside documents, old papers, medical records, legal forms, photographs, letters, proof of everything they tried to erase, proof of every lie, proof of every abandonment, evidence of truth. She laid everything on the table slowly, methodically, like preparing for something irreversible. That night she sat beside Lily again, holding her hand gently. Sweetheart, soon we're going somewhere important. Lily blinked sleepily. Is it scary? Grace smiled softly. No, it's necessary. Across the city, in a large house filled with polished floors and expensive silence, her parents prepared too. Guest lists finalized, media invited, public statements rehearsed, narrative perfected. Their daughter had returned, their family restored, their legacy secured, everything planned, everything controlled, everything predictable. Except one thing, truth. And truth doesn't follow plans. Grace stood by her window again that night, the black sedan still there, watching, waiting. She whispered into the darkness. You wanted control. You wanted legacy. You wanted an heir. Her voice lowered, steady, unshakable. You should have wanted a daughter. The anniversary party was 5 days away. 5 days until public reunion. 5 days until the performance. 5 days until truth walked into a room full of witnesses. And this time, no one would be able to pretend she never existed. Revenge is loud. Justice is quiet. Grace wasn't interested in revenge anymore. That belonged to the version of her who cried herself to sleep at 16, hungry, abandoned, terrified of the future. That girl had needed anger to survive. But the woman standing in her kitchen now, she didn't need anger. She had something far more dangerous. Clarity. The morning after she accepted the anniversary invitation, Grace woke before sunrise. The world outside was still dark, silent, undecided. She liked mornings like this. They felt honest. No pretending. No noise. Just space to think. And she had a lot to think about. The kitchen table was covered again. Documents, old files, hospital records, legal discharge papers from when she was a minor and forcibly removed from the family register, copies of unanswered letters she had once sent, begging for help, support, acknowledgement. Every ignored envelope was preserved. Every silence recorded. She had kept everything. Not because she planned revenge, but because when the world tries to erase you, proof becomes survival. Grace moved slowly, organizing papers into labeled folders. Timeline, evidence of abandonment, proof of independent guardianship, financial records showing zero parental support, Marcus's death certificate, insurance documents, Lily's birth record, each file a piece of truth, each page a voice that had been silenced, but not anymore. Behind her, small footsteps approached. Lily stood in the doorway, rubbing her sleepy eyes. Mama, why are you working so early? Grace turned and smiled softly. Because sometimes the most important work happens before the world wakes up. Lily walked closer, looking at the papers. Is this about the party? Grace hesitated. Children sense truth even when adults soften it. Yes, she answered gently. Will they be nice this time? The question cut deeper than expected. Grace knelt to Lily's height. I don't know, she said honestly. But I promise they will never have power over us. Lily nodded, trusting completely. That trust was everything. After breakfast, Grace walked Lily to school as usual. But something inside her had shifted. The city looked different. Not threatening, not overwhelming, just neutral. For years she had moved through life reacting. Now she was moving with intention. That changes how the world feels. It happened unexpectedly that afternoon. A phone call from her supervisor, his voice unusually excited. Grace, can you come to the office immediately? Her stomach tightened. Unexpected calls rarely bring calm news. But when she arrived, the entire department was gathered, smiling, waiting. Her supervisor approached holding a folder. Congratulations, he said warmly. She blinked. For what? He handed her the folder. Inside, official promotion confirmation, senior development director, salary increase, leadership authority, full program control. Her breath caught slightly. This wasn't just career progress. This was power, influence, decision-making capacity. She had worked years for this, late nights, extra shifts, endless persistence, all while raising Lily alone. And now, recognition. Earned, not given. Applause filled the room. Colleagues smiling genuinely, proud, supportive. For a moment, emotion overwhelmed her. Not because of the promotion, but because no one here saw her as a scandal, or a mistake, or shame. They saw competence, strength, value, everything her parents never acknowledged. On the drive home, she didn't turn on the radio. She wanted silence. Her mind processing the shift. Promotion meant visibility, visibility meant credibility, credibility meant influence. And influence changes how truth is received. Timing mattered, and now the timing was perfect. That evening, Grace added something new to the kitchen table. A laptop. She opened a secure digital folder. Video recordings, audio files, scanned documents, witness statements from people who remembered her being thrown out, neighbors, former teachers, hospital staff. Years ago, she had gathered these quietly, not knowing when or if she would ever use them. But survival creates preparation, and preparation creates power. She began building a presentation clear, chronological, undeniable, not emotional storytelling, factual sequence, evidence-based truth. She wasn't going to accuse her parents. She was going to show reality. And reality doesn't need drama. It only needs light. Across town, her parents were also preparing. But their preparation looked very different. Tailored suits, public speeches, professional photographers booked, media invitations confirmed, a short documentary being prepared titled Family Restored. Their narrative was simple. Their daughter had struggled, but they welcomed her back with love. Their grandchild would symbolize unity, redemption, generational continuity. Beautiful, inspiring, completely false. Grace worked late into the night, every slide precise. Every date verified, every document scanned in high resolution, every piece of evidence impossible to dispute. No exaggeration, no interpretation, only truth, cold, clear, complete. At midnight, she finally leaned back in her chair, still but calm. She looked toward Lily's bedroom, soft light glowing under the door, her daughter reading before sleep, safe, protected. unaware of the storm forming around her life. Grace whispered softly to the empty room, "I will not let them rewrite our story." The next day, the black sedan disappeared. For the first time in weeks, no watcher, no silent observer. Grace noticed immediately, which meant one thing. They believed they had won. They believed she was cooperating willingly. They believed control was restored. People are most vulnerable when they feel secure. Her promotion announcement spread quickly. Professional networks, community organizations, local leadership groups, invitations began arriving, panels, events, public recognition ceremonies. Her reputation growing rapidly, and reputation is armor. Her parents wanted social influence. Grace now possessed her own. 3 days before the anniversary, she visited Marcus's grave. The cemetery, quiet, wind soft, sky pale gray. She knelt slowly, placing fresh flowers. For a long moment, she said nothing, just breathed, remembered, felt, then finally whispered, "They think they can take credit for the life I built." Silence answered, but it felt like listening silence, the kind that understands without responding. "I wish you could see Lily now," she continued softly. "She's strong, kind, fearless." Her voice broke slightly. "Just like you were?" She touched the cool stone gently. "I'm not fighting them for revenge. I'm protecting what we created." Wind moved through the trees, soft, steady, almost like agreement. That night, Lily asked another question. "Mama, are you nervous about the party?" Grace considered carefully. "Yes," she admitted. "Why?" "Because truth changes things." Lily tilted her head. "Is truth scary?" Grace smiled gently. "Only for people who hide from it." 2 days before the event, Grace finished everything. Digital backups stored in multiple locations. Printed copies prepared. Legal review completed by independent attorney, ensuring every claim supported by evidence. Nothing defamatory, nothing speculative, just documented reality. She closed the final folder slowly. Prepared, completely. Across the city, her parents rehearsed their welcome speech. Her father practicing his warm tone. Her mother practicing emotional expressions in the mirror. They believed this night would strengthen their legacy, restore their image, secure their future. They had no idea. Their future was about to be rewritten. The night before the anniversary, Grace stood in front of her bedroom mirror, dress hanging ready, simple, elegant, not designed to impress, designed to be taken seriously. She looked at her reflection carefully. Not the frightened girl who once begged for acceptance, not the grieving widow who struggled to survive. A woman who endured, adapted, built, protected, and now spoke. She walked to Lily's room one last time, sat beside her sleeping daughter, brushed her hair gently. Tomorrow would change many things, but not this love, not this bond, not this life they created together. Grace whispered into the quiet darkness. Tomorrow they meet the truth. And truth doesn't ask permission. Some battles begin with shouting. Others begin with silence, polished floors, soft music, and smiling faces hiding sharpened intentions. This was the second kind. The anniversary morning arrived with unnatural brightness. Sunlight spilled across the city like nothing important was about to happen. Like today was ordinary. Like truth wasn't preparing to walk into a room full of carefully constructed lies. Grace woke before her alarm, her body alert before her mind fully surfaced. For a moment she lay still, listening, breathing, grounding herself. Not fear, not hesitation, just awareness. Today would not be emotional chaos. Today would be precision. Across the hallway, Lily was already awake, sitting on her bed, holding the dress Grace had prepared for her. Soft cream fabric, simple, elegant, gentle, not decorative, not ornamental, just dignified. Lily looked up quietly. "Mama, today is the party." Not a question, a recognition. Grace nodded. "Yes." "Will there be many people?" "Yes." "Will they look at me?" Grace walked closer, knelt, took Lily's small hands in hers. "Yes," she answered honestly. "But remember something important." Lily listened carefully. "They are not looking at you because you belong to them." Pause. "They are looking because you are strong enough to stand without them." Lily's shoulders straightened slightly. Children understand strength faster than adults do. Grace dressed slowly, carefully, deliberately. Dark blue dress, structured lines, no excessive jewelry. Hair pulled back, cleanly. Professional, grounded, unshakable. She wasn't dressing for approval. She was dressing for authority. The drive to the venue felt longer than usual. Traffic normal. City moving as always. But inside the car, time stretched. Lily watched buildings pass quietly. Grace kept her eyes forward, focused, every breath measured, every thought organized. This wasn't a family gathering. This was a stage, and stages require preparation. The venue appeared gradually, rising behind iron gates like a monument to wealth. Grand stone architecture, tall windows reflecting sky like mirrors, perfect landscaping trimmed with unnatural precision. Nothing spontaneous, nothing imperfect, everything controlled, exactly like her parents. Luxury vehicles lined the entrance, uniformed attendants guiding arrivals, soft classical music drifting from open doors, voices, laughter, polite conversation. Grace parked slowly. Engine off, silence filled the car. She turned to Lily. "Ready." Lily swallowed once, then nodded. Grace took her hand. Warm, small, trusting. That trust anchored everything. As they approached the entrance, conversations paused. Not loudly, not obviously, but attention shifted. Recognition spread quietly through the crowd. Whispers moved faster than sound. "That's her. She came. That must be the child." They said she would return. Narratives already forming. Stories already written. Truth not yet spoken. Inside the hall glowed with golden light. Crystal chandeliers reflect elegance from every angle. Round tables covered in white silk. Floral arrangements arranged with mathematical precision. A large stage at the far end. 2 seats placed prominently at center. Her parents' seats. Symbolic throne. Symbolic authority. Symbolic ownership. Grace noticed everything. Details reveal intentions, and this room was designed for display. Then her mother saw her. Expression changed instantly. Warmth spreading across her face like rehearsed sunlight. Arms opened wide. My daughter. Grace remained still for half a second. Just enough to observe, then stepped forward. A loud brief embrace. Her mother held tightly, possessively, like reclaiming something misplaced. But Grace didn't lean in, didn't soften, didn't respond emotionally. Presence without surrender. Her father approached next. Controlled smile. Measured gaze. Assessing. Calculating. His eyes moved from Grace to Lily, then back. Interest focused. Evaluating value, not affection. Never affection. He placed a hand on Grace's shoulder. Public gesture, symbolic reconciliation. Welcome home, he said calmly. Grace met his gaze, steady, unblinking. I never left myself, she replied quietly. His fingers tightened slightly, then released. Message received. Control not restored. Guests gathered gradually. Influential figures, business leaders, community authorities, social elites. Everyone smiling, everyone observing, everyone waiting for the narrative moment. They expected emotional reunion, forgiveness, restoration. A perfect public story. Grace could feel anticipation building like pressure inside sealed glass. Lily stayed close to Grace's side, watching everything, absorbing atmosphere, her grip on Grace's hand firm, but not fearful. Just aware. Grace bent slightly, gluing perfectly, she whispered. Lily nodded.
I'm watching.
She replied softly. Grace smiled faintly. Yes, watch, observe, understand. That was always their strength. A woman approached, elegant, curious, politely intrusive. We've heard so much about you, she said warmly. Grace tilted her head slightly. Interesting? She replied calmly. I've heard very little from them. The woman blinked, uncertain how to respond. Polite smile returned, but tension lingered. Conversation ended quickly. Truth creates discomfort even in small doses. Across the hall, photographers adjusted equipment. Stage lighting tested. Microphones prepared. Program schedule printed. Everything choreographed. Her parents woo gracefully through guests, greeting smiling, presenting themselves as gracious hosts. Their confidence radiated. They believed tonight confirmed their power, their legacy, their narrative they had no idea of. They had invited contradiction into the room themselves. An hour passed. Conversation flowed. Music softened. Drinks circulated. Social energy rising toward announcement moment. Grace remained composed, observing patterns, tracking movement, understanding structure. Every large event has rhythm, and disruption is most effective at peak expectation. Her mother returned, voice warm, almost glowing. In a few minutes we'll begin the formal program. She looked down at Lily. So many people are excited to meet you. Lily responded simply. I didn't know they were waiting for me. Her mother laughed lightly. Oh yes, you are very important tonight. Grace watched her carefully. Important.
Yes.
But not in the way they imagined. Her father approached again, voice low, private. After speeches, we will introduce you properly. Not asking Florling. Declaring structure. Grace nodded slowly. Of course, she said. Agreeable. Compliant on the surface. His shoulders relaxed slightly. He believed alignment achieved, control restored. Guests began taking seats. Lights dimmed slightly, stage illuminated, attention narrowing, focus sharpening. The performance about to begin. Grace felt Lily's hand tighten gently. She squeezed back reassuringly. Steady, grounded, present. Her parents walked onto stage first. Applause immediate, warm, respectful, admiring. Her father began speaking. Voice strong, polished, resonant. 40 years of marriage, family values, enduring love, community respect. Every word carefully shaped, every sentence reinforcing identity, legacy, stability, honor. The audience absorbed the story willingly. Beautiful narrative, convincing, incomplete. Then came the moment. Her mother stepped forward, voice softer, emotional. But tonight our celebration holds deeper meaning. Pause, perfectly timed. Emotion visible. Rehearsed vulnerability. Our beloved daughter has returned to us. Applause again, stronger. Stronger, more emotional, narrative confirmed. Audience invested. Grace stood slowly, heart steady, breathing calm, Lily beside her. They began walking toward the stage, every eye following, every expectation rising, every assumption forming. Her parents smiling widely, arms open, inviting symbolic reunion. They believed this was culmination, resolution, victory. Grace stepped onto the stage, lights warm on her face, room silent, watching, waiting. Her father extended hand toward microphone. To introduce our family, Grace lifted her hand slightly, gentle interruption, polite, controlled. I would like to speak first, she said calmly. A small pause rippled across the room. Unexpected but not alarming. Her father hesitated, then nodded slowly, confident nothing threatened them. Confidence is most dangerous before collapse. Grace stepped toward microphone, looked across the crowd, hundreds of faces, expecting gratitude, reconciliation, emotion, closure. Instead, she inhaled slowly and spoke. Thank you all, a gathering to celebrate family. Her voice clear, steady, unshaking. And because this night is about family. Small pause. measured, precise. I believe every family's story deserves to be told completely. Silence deepened. Attention sharpened, something shifted in the air. Invisible but undeniable. Her parents exchanged brief glances. Confusion flickering. Not fear yet, but uncertainty beginning. Grace reached into her bag slowly, removed a small remote device, turned slightly toward the projection screen behind the stage. Her voice calm, almost gentle. So tonight I would like to share ours. And in that moment, the narrative they built for 20 years began to fracture. Silence has weight. Not ordinary silence, the kind that follows music or polite applause. This was heavier, the kind of silence that forms when reality begins pressing against illusion, and illusion doesn't know how to survive the pressure. Grace stood beneath warm stage lights, remote steady in her hand, her parents beside her, still smiling, but their expressions had begun to tighten. They sensed something unfamiliar, not rebellion, not emotion, control. The large screen behind them flickered softly. First, just a blank white background. Then a single line of text appeared, family history, verified timeline. Murmurs rippled faintly across the hall. Confusion, curiosity, polite uncertainty. Guests leaned forward slightly, still expecting a sentimental tribute, a memory montage, a story of reconciliation. That expectation lasted exactly 4 seconds. The first image appeared, a scanned hospital record. Date, patient name, Grace, age 16. Medical note, pregnancy confirmed. Admission details, emergency contact field, blank. No parent's signature. No guardian approval. No family acknowledgement. Only medical staff signatures. Nothing else. Grace spoke calmly. At 16, when my pregnancy was confirmed, no family member signed my hospital admission. Her voice carried clearly across the room. No accusation, no emotion, only fact. Another slide. A legal notice. Temporary removal of minor from family residence. Filed by local authority after emergency welfare report. Reason minor expelled from home. No alternative housing provided. No parental support declared. The murmurs grew louder now, not dramatic, but unsettled. People shifting in chairs, glancing at one another, reprocessing what they thought they knew. Her mother's smile froze. Her father's jaw tightened slightly. Still silent, still composed. But no longer relaxed, Grace pressed the remote again. Next slide. Copies of handwritten letters, dated, stamped. Registered delivery confirmations. Every letter addressed to her parents, requests for support, requests for medical help, requests for basic contact. Every envelope marked. No response received. Grace spoke again. I wrote 32 letters over 18 months. Pause. No reply was ever sent. The room felt colder now. Guests no longer whispering casually. They were calculating, comparing, reconciling public image with documented evidence, and those two things were not aligning. Her father stepped slightly closer. Voice low, tight. Grace, this is not appropriate for tonight. Microphone still in her hand. Her voice remained calm. This is exactly what tonight is about. She didn't look at him when she spoke. She looked at the audience, and that changed everything. Next slide. Marcus, a photograph, young, smiling, alive. Beside it, death certificate, cause of death clearly listed, date, official seal, Grace inhaled once, controlled, measured. The father of my child worked double shifts to support us. Another click. Employment records, overtime logs, insurance contributions, then medical bill statements, paid entirely by him. No parental financial assistance. None. A woman in the front row raised her hand slowly to her mouth. Someone else shifted uncomfortably. Another guest leaned forward, reading every detail carefully. This was no longer storytelling. This was documentation. Her mother, fumbling, stepped forward, voice trembling slightly but still controlled. We helped privately. Not everything needs public record. Grace pressed the remote again. Next slide. Bank statements, years of transactions, income expenses, balance records, all independently earned, no transfers, no deposits, no parental financial support, zero. The word appeared clearly on screen. No documented family contribution. Her mother stopped speaking. The air changed again. Not confusion now. Recognition. People were beginning to understand. This was not a misunderstanding. This was contradiction. Grace turned slightly, finally looking at her parents directly. Her voice softer now, but sharper. Family is not defined by speeches. Pause. It is defined by presence. The words landed heavily, because everyone in the room understood their meaning. Next slide. A photograph of Grace at 19, holding newborn Lily, standing outside a small apartment building. Alone. Beside it, rental contract, single occupant, emergency contact, none listed. Guardian support, none declared. A quiet male voice from the audience spoke unintentionally. Oh my God? Not dramatic, just realization. Unfiltered. Human. Her father's composure cracked for the first time, his voice louder now. Firm. This is manipulation. Selective presentation? Grace didn't argue. Didn't interrupt. She simply pressed the remote again. Witness statements appeared signed, dated, former neighbors confirming she was removed from the home. A school counselor documenting emotional distress after family rejection. Hospital staff reporting absence of parental involvement. Independent verification. Multiple sources. Consistent accounts. The room had become completely still, no whispering, no shifting, only absorption, only processing. Truth was no longer entering the room. Truth had filled it. Grace stepped slightly forward, closer to the edge of the stage, her voice quieter now, forcing the audience to listen carefully. For 20 years, I was not part of their family story. Pause. They did not know where I lived. Other pause. They did not know if I survived childbirth. Longer pause. They did not know their grandchild's name. Silence pressed against every surface. Then she said the sentence that changed everything. And yet, she looked directly at her father. They told everyone they were waiting for their grandson. Gasps scattered across the room, loud but sharp, immediate. Disbelief colliding with realization. Grace turned slowly, gesturing gently toward Lily standing beside the stage, calm, small, watching everything quietly. My child is not their grandson. Pause. She is their granddaughter. Another pause. The child they never asked about. Someone in the back whispered loudly enough to be heard. They didn't even know. That question hung in the air like a crack splitting glass. Her parents' faces had changed completely now. Color drained, composure fractured, eyes moving rapidly, not in control, but searching for recovery, for denial, for narrative repair. But evidence leaves no space for narrative. Grace's voice softened even more, almost compassionate. For 20 years, they told people they lost a daughter. Pause. But the truth is, her eyes steady, unmoving. They never looked for her. No applause. No sound, only breathing, hundreds of people breathing differently now, processing moral weight, reevaluating admiration, rewriting perception. Grace lowered the remote slowly. Screen fading to black. No dramatic music. No final image. Just emptiness. Truth had been shown. Nothing more required. She stepped back from the microphone. Calm. Centered. Finished. But the room. The room was just beginning to understand what had happened. Her parents stood frozen beside her. 40 years of reputation. Balanced on silence they could no longer control. And for the first time in their lives, they were not the ones shaping the story. The envelope sat on Grace's desk for 3 full days before she touched it. Plain white. No return address. But she already knew who it was from. Her parents. Even after everything, they still found ways to reach her. She didn't open it immediately. She just stared at it every morning when sunlight slid across her office window. The same office she had built from nothing. The same office they once said she would never deserve. 3 days, 3 nights of wondering. What more could they possibly want now? Finally, on the 4th morning, she opened it. Inside was a letter written in her mother's handwriting. Soft loops. Careful strokes. The kind she used when Grace was a child writing lunchbox notes that said, "I love you." Grace almost laughed. Almost she began reading. Grace, we know we made mistakes. We were scared, confused young parents who didn't know how to handle shame, but we want to make things right. Please bring our grandson home. He deserves to know his family. Grace stopped reading. Her fingers tightened around the paper until it crumpled. Grandson. Still, after all these years, that was the only word that mattered to them. Not daughter, not forgiveness, not love, just grandson. She walked slowly to the window and looked down at the city far below. Cars moved like tiny insects. People rushing, living lives, loving someone, losing someone. All the ordinary things she had survived without them. Her chest didn't ache anymore when she thought about that night, the night they threw her out. It didn't burn anymore, but it had hardened, like stone shaped by years of quiet storms. She finished reading the letter. They wanted to meet. They said they had changed. They said they wanted a fresh beginning. They said the child deserved grandparents. They said they were ready to accept responsibility. Grace smiled faintly. They still didn't understand. Responsibility wasn't something you accepted after success. Love wasn't something you offered after profit. And family? Family wasn't something you remembered when you needed something, but something unexpected stirred inside her. Not anger. Not sadness. Closure. She realized she didn't want to avoid them anymore. She wanted to look them in the eyes, not as the frightened girl they abandoned, but as the woman who survived them. She picked up her phone and typed a message. Meet me Sunday, 3 p.m., the Willow Cafe. Then she placed the phone down and breathed out slowly. The past was coming to sit across from her, and this time she wouldn't be the one shaking. Sunday arrived with quiet rain, soft, steady, almost peaceful. Grace arrived early. She always did. Control had become her survival instinct. She chose a table near the window, ordered tea, waited. At exactly 3:02 p.m., the door opened. Her parents stepped inside. They looked older, smaller somehow, like life had quietly carved pieces away from them. Her mother spotted her first. Her eyes filled instantly with tears. Real or rehearsed, Grace couldn't tell. Her father followed, his posture stiff, pride still clinging to him like an old coat he refused to remove. They approached slowly, like strangers, like people unsure if they were allowed to sit. Grace gestured calmly. Set. Silence. Heavy. Almost visible. Her mother spoke first. Grace, you look beautiful. Grace nodded politely. Her father cleared his throat. You've done well for yourself. Another nod. They were circling something, both of them afraid to touch the center. Finally, her mother leaned forward. Where is he? Grace tilted her head. Who? Her mother's voice trembled. Our grandson? There it was. Not even 5 minutes. Grace folded her hands calmly. You've never asked how I survived? Silence. You never asked where I lived, how I ate, if I was safe. Her father shifted uncomfortably. Her mother whispered. We were ashamed. Grace raised a hand gently. No. You were selfish? The word landed softly, but it crushed the air in the room. Her father's voice hardened. We are trying to fix things now. Grace looked directly at him. Why now? He hesitated. Her mother answered instead. Because we heard about your success, and we realized how much we lost. Grace watched her carefully. Not how much they lost, how much they could gain back. Then her father spoke the truth and realized he was revealing. He's our blood, our legacy. Grace's heartbeat slowed. There it was. Not love. Ownership. She leaned back in her chair, and for the first time she smiled fully. Soft, calm, certain. There is no grandson. The words floated gently between them. Her mother blinked. Her father frowned. What do you mean? Grace's voice never shook. I was never pregnant with a son. Confusion flooded their faces. Her mother whispered, "But the baby, the child." Grace held their gaze steadily. I had a daughter. Silence exploded. Her father stood halfway from his chair. A daughter? Shock, disappointment, calculation. It all crossed his face in seconds. Her mother looked stunned, but something colder followed. Relief fading into indifference. No heir, no legacy, no grandson. Grace watched realization spread through them like slow poison. Years of obsession, built on an assumption. They never even cared enough to know the truth. Her mother's voice turned quiet. Ugh, just that. Not where is she? Not is she, Kay? Not can we meet her? Just, oh. Grace leaned forward gently. She's brilliant, kind, strong, no reaction. She's everything I needed when I had no one. Still no reaction. Her father sat back down heavily. So no son. Grace shook her head slowly. No son. And something incredible happened. Their urgency vanished. Their desperation dissolved. Their warmth cooled. The performance ended. Her mother looked down at her hands. Her father cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, that changes things. Grace's chest tightened, not from pain, from clarity. Pure, undeniable clarity. They never came for her. They never came for the child. They came for the idea of a grandson, an heir, a symbol, an investment. Grace stood up, calm, composed, free. You wanted family when it benefited you. She placed money on the table for her tea. But family is who stays when there is nothing to gain. Her mother looked up suddenly. Grace, wait, we didn't mean. Grace smiled gently. Yes, you did. She turned to leave, but her father spoke one last time. Will we ever meet her? Grace paused at the doorway, didn't turn around. No, a quiet breath, because she will never learn that love must be earned through usefulness. Then she walked out into the rain. Outside, the world felt strangely light, like something heavy had finally slipped from her shoulders forever. She walked slowly down the street, rain touching her face. Cool, clean, honest. Her phone buzzed. A message from home. A photo. Her daughter, laughing, holding a paintbrush covered in colors, smiling with fearless joy. Grace's chest filled with warmth so powerful it almost hurt. This was family, chosen, protected. Real, she typed back. Be home soon. Love you. Then she stopped walking, looked up at the sky, and whispered softly. They begged for a son who never existed, but they never deserved the daughter who did. For the first time in her life, Grace didn't feel abandoned. She felt complete. And behind her, in a quiet cafe, two people finally understood what they truly lost. Not a grandson, not a legacy, but the only daughter who ever loved them without conditions. And they lost her forever.